Well, Starfleet has committed to finding a non-human interface. Until that happens, I'm happy to go the old-fashioned way.
Captain on the bridge?
Acting, Captain. Please take your stations. You may consult with Science Officer Burnham later.
Thank you, Mr. Saru, for permitting me this small indulgence. I never tire of seeing home.
Of course. Lieutenant Detmer, have we cleared the Sol system?
Yes, Captain.
Set course for Vulcan and engage at maximum warp.
Aye, sir.
Incoming transmission.
From whom?
I'm having trouble identifying it, but it's a priority 1 distress call.
Identify the source, please.
I'm getting a Federation ID code. It's choppy. Trying to clean it up, sir.
Helm, slow us down.
Dropping us out of warp now, sir.
This is Captain Saru of the Federation Starship Discovery. Please identify yourselves.
Hails from Captain Pike, sir.
It's the USS Enterprise.
It's also very much of its time, you know.
Right.
Very Apple inspired.
Well, folks, we're here. We're live on the air. Facebook Live, February... What is today, anyway? 18th, 2018. The only time for the next 100 years you can put down the date 2/18/18.
Huh?
It's the only time in the next 100 years you can put the date 2/18/18. My confused my confused young friend here is author Julio Angel Ortiz. Hey, Julio.
Hey, how's it going?
I notice weird things like this with the dates. Because I actually got disappointed when I didn't notice them. Like somebody else would point them out. I'm like, oh, I can't play with that date anymore. It's gone now. You know, I'll never see it in my lifetime.
Yeah,
I'm weird like that.
No, I get it. Sometimes, like when you realize the next time that date's going to happen and you're like not going to be here, most likely, it's like, oh yeah, I could live in a finite timeline.
Yeah. All right, now I see your mug there. That's Star Wars?
Yep.
Oh,
my wife got me this. My amazing, lovely wife.
Your amazing, lovely wife. Actually, I don't remember where I got this. It might have been my wife. It might have been somebody else. But we're going Hollywood today, as you can see from my movie slates, because we're going to be talking Star Trek Discovery. Now, I was one of those people when they said they were bringing back Star Trek to TV that I was skeptical. I got to admit it. I just... And not that I think they couldn't pull it off and everything, but I thought, haven't we done enough? Haven't we told the story enough times? Keith DeCanto, who I have yet to see appear on this show. I put his name in the credits at the end of every episode, but he's a busy man, and he says he will be here, other than the reviews. But he has said Star Trek always worked best in a television format. It really wasn't meant for the movies, because with the television format, you could, do the arcing storylines and stuff. With a movie, you got to nail everything in little over 2 hours. And a lot of times the movies can't really get as in-depth with the story, the messages, the morals, the meanings, to steal from Mission Log with John Champion and Ken Ray. But I was skeptical. I thought, enough with Star Trek. It was a mistake, I thought, in the beginning anyway, to bring back with the J.J. Abrams movies after Enterprise fell. I thought, kind of like Batman, kind of like even Doctor Who got a rest of 10, 15 years or so of sorts, before there was the movie, and then another bunch of years before Eccleston came along. I thought Star Trek needed that rest. I thought Star Trek just needed to lay low and not, come back. And I know that sounds sad because I am a Star Trek fan, but I wasn't impressed. But then the show came along. Now, before we get started, I just want to roll one more little video clip here, just from one of the previews, for those of you who haven't seen it. And by the way, if you haven't seen it, be prepared. A lot of spoilers going to happen today between me and Julio as we talk about this show.
We strive toward this dream of peace, where all species can share common ground. Yet no dream will protect us from you.
We have been waiting for someone worthy of our attention.
I'm trying to save you. I'm trying to save all of you.
The work we do is hard.
Go!
And it's not without sacrifice. We are a long way from home. But I know that it is a sacrifice worth making. You know what we need to do?
We need to win.
That's the spirit.
All life is born from chaos. The world doesn't always adhere to logic. Sometimes down is up. And sometimes when you're lost, you're found.
The Klingon Empire has been in disarray for generations.
We've encountered them.
We have been waiting for someone worthy of our attention.
Captain, incoming!
Change is the essential process of all existence, Commander Burnham.
Go!
You must challenge your preconceptions, or they most certainly will challenge you.
What the hell is going on this ship?
Run!
We are creating a new way to fly.
Better hurry.
We're getting very close to...
You're mad.
I'm mud. You chose to do the right thing. Even at great cost to yourself. You helped start a war. Don't you want to help me end it?
But I don't know what to do.
Oh, I go away. I'm sorry, Siri went off during that. Oh, Siri and I were having a little conversation that I didn't mean to have.
John's dark secrets revealed.
So, all right, Julio, your thoughts when you heard first about Discovery?
I was a little bit in your boat in terms of skepticism,
Right.
but my skepticism really didn't jump in or didn't really become magnified until I heard that it was set 10 years before the original series, roughly. That was what really got me skeptical. Because I thought, okay, we're doing another prequel series.
Yeah.
And I know, like, Enterprise, there's enough of a time gap between Enterprise and Discovery that they're not going to, there's not going to be no overlap. It's going to be discovering, like, looking at different things. But I was just like, I'm kind of just, in terms of Trek, kind of tired of looking back on TV.
Sure.
Looking backwards, and I was hoping we'd go forwards, even if it's, 100-year, leap after Next Generation or whatever. Just something, what's the next phase for Trek in that sense? And so, yeah, when I heard it was another prequel, I was like, I don't know. Okay, let's see. And as we go through the episode, you'll see that I was very pleasantly surprised by the results.
I was very pleasantly surprised too, but it took me 2 viewings of the first half of this first season to get pleasantly surprised. I got to admit, especially the 2-parter at the beginning, I get the purpose of it, and watching it now again, I appreciate it and I like it for what it is. But it was like the first 2 episodes, it's like, where's Discovery? This show's called Star Trek. Where's Discovery? There were just so many things that, like, and again, maybe a lot of that was my skepticism, just also getting in there, and I just wanted to be a negative Nelly, and because
not you, John.
Why are they even bothering with CBS? Why? And I wasn't the kind who said I won't pay for it. I didn't do that. I wasn't that. But I was the kind. Why taunt us with free? And then say, now you got to pay for the rest. It's like the drug dealer. I'll give you a little taste, man. And here, now you want Discovery up your veins. It's like, shoot him up. Here's access.
Well, it's funny you say that. Like, 2 things about that. One is that's actually what I've heard the most from people that I would expect, people in real life that I know, that they won't pay for, and they didn't pay for CBS All Access. And a part of me wants to go, dude, it's $5.99 a month. Like, no one's gonna die. But that's not from my place to say that. But like, I really thought, like, more of my friends that were Trekkies and were into, Next Generation, DS9, the original series, and would jump on it. And I'm the only one I know that paid the $5.99 a month for CBS All Access.
I mean, look. Maybe it's that whole attitude of, I never paid for Star Trek. Oh, wait a minute, I went to the movies. I never paid for Star Trek. Oh, wait a minute, I bought the DVD. That whole mentality is just so stupid, because you pay for, you want to see the Marvel shows like Daredevil and stuff, you're paying for it. You want to watch Runaways on Hulu, you're paying for it. You wanted to see that last season of The Mindy Project, you paid for it. It made no sense. It made no sense, that kind of resistance. That was the one thing I couldn't get when it came to Star Trek Discovery. I get the resistance of, set 10 years in the past. It's like, oh my God, here we go backwards again. I get the whole... I get it, because I was the one who was saying it. Do we really need another TV show now? But to say you weren't watching it because of paying to watch it, that just blew the mind. It just blew the mind.
Yeah, and I look at it, and the way I looked at it when I was, picking it up, I'm like, if I were to buy the box set / the whole season as a digital download or whatever, I'm gonna probably wind up paying the same thing, if not more. So that's, to me, in my brain, how I justified the cost. But I don't know. You're gonna watch it eventually somewhere. I mean, in America, outside of the U.S., it was on Netflix, wasn't it?
Right. Yeah, Denise, who was going to be with us for the weekly Patioplex, she is overseas right now, and she's watching it on Netflix. And in fact, the trailer I ran was the Netflix trailer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
But getting to the show itself, this is going to be embarrassing, because I'll admit I don't go looking for morning discussions the day after for each of the episodes. I didn't do that. I haven't been on Trek BBS in like ages, I'll be honest with you, because I got a little tired of some of the bickering and the fighting that went on sometimes.
What?
What? The what? I didn't get Disco. I didn't get it. I didn't get it until recently. I'm listening to one of the, because I do listen to that, John Champion. I go back to John Champion and Ken Ray's excellent, and you should be listening to it or watching it here on Facebook Live as well. They do it on Tuesday nights Mission Log Live, where they are discussing each of the new episodes, and apparently they're going to be doing episodes beyond that. They I guess they're enjoying themselves so much, they're like, hey, we got this whole setup, why wait till 2019 to come back and do it again? But they explained Disco during, of all things, a promo for the Eagle Moss ships line, I think it was, and I just sat there and went, so that's what this... Because, like, I couldn't get it. I'm like, they're wearing the shirts. Okay, they're playing the Fugees. Are they trying to say Disco isn't dead? Is that Star Trek's message for us now?
That's the hidden message throughout season 1. We didn't, that's the real subplot.
Disco isn't dead.
Yep.
Now I want a Disco shirt.
And you can at chronicgriff.com/shop. I don't know if that's a really URL.
No, they actually do have... Because I think I saw Dayton Ward... say he got his in the mail or something. Somebody I know said they got it. So the shirts do exist. You can purchase them. But now that I understand, especially because it's also a simple black, and I look better in black. But but here's the thing, and I agree with you about the 10 years. I do agree with you. That is a concern too. But I will say this much: I didn't have as much of a problem with the 10 years prior as I did with the fact that they kind of went off a little off the rails, and I don't fault them for that, with what was established timeline. I mean, was there really that violent a time 10 years before Kirk and them that occurred? I mean, I know there were battles, and I know there were conflicts with the Klingons, and maybe I'm misremembering, but they went a little off, in my opinion, and then yet still, they managed to remind us this is Star Trek. I had a real problem, as much as I loved Rainn Wilson, with Harry Mudd being in the story. I had a real problem, as much as my heart leaped when I saw it in the end, as we saw in the opening, before the opening credits, that the Enterprise was there. I had a problem with Surak, and not because somebody else was playing him, because we were already establishing that with J.J. Abrams. I had no problem with that. I just had a problem with them actually bringing in too many of the original series references. It's almost like, here's our show, but we can't trust it to stand on its own. So we're going to bring in elements that everybody's familiar with to maybe even quell the crybabies.
Yeah, but I think the other side of that is you have a series that takes place in this really rich time period, and then you never bring it up. You never have you never mention Enterprise. You never mention any of the other elements, and you kind of then you'd have fans being upset or saying, hey, there's a lot of great opportunities for X, Y, Z. Why aren't you using them? Right. I think James Frain as Harry, I think he's fantastic. Was fantastic in the role, and I think it kind of the way he anchors Burnham's character, and I think the way it was a very interesting dynamic between the two, especially early in the season. Yeah. That's always great. I guess what I'm trying to say is the elements that they did bring in, I felt they used to serve the plot. It wasn't just for the sake of having a reference. Okay. You know what I mean?
Well, no, until you get to the end, and then you're like setting this up, and it's like, and yet at the same time, I'm all excited because I'm like, okay, we're going to see their version of Pike, their version of Kirk, not Kirk, but Spock. Although it does, though, beg the question then, is it that momentous an occasion? Because, like, I've read Drastic Measures by David Mack, and they already met the Enterprise, and, Spock, we've seen Spock and all meet up with the crew and stuff. So, is it that momentous, no, I won't do it. I won't do it. I won't ask.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm not going to ask the canon question, because I know what happens every time you ask the canon question. 1,000 Trekkies die I can't. I won't. I promise. I'll be good.
I don't want to throw gasoline on that fire, but no, almost pages.
I know, right?
I think with the novel question, I mean, love David Mack, and the most common thing people would say would be like, well, how many people that are watching this show have read the book? I mean, people like you and I read the books. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I still think it doesn't lose its impact. I mean, that final scene, as much as probably anybody will say, well, they should have had the Enterprise, there were a lot of people that were like squeeing, the ships were like, you're like, inside, deep inside, you were outside, maybe you're like, real calm, real stoic, but inside you were freaking out.
You were freaking out. The Enterprise is alive again. The Enterprise. And that's the other thing. Not J.J. Abrams, which was nice, it was serviceable. The Enterprise is alive again.
Yeah, and it looked great. I like how they kept they kept the true to the spirit, and it looks like it. But the way they did update it, and it did look fantastic.
I thought it was actually like a little blending of the original series and then taking some of the elements from the motion picture. Some.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine.
You see, and then here, like I am, we're talking about canon and fanboyism and all that, and I'm sitting there going, it doesn't look like the way was it Defiant in the Mirror universe?
Right.
Because they made a point of showing that the schematics of the ship, and it's a Constitution class, but it looks different with the way the nacelles, if I remember correctly, were done. It looked different from what has been established as canon.
Right.
So I was kind of curious, like when they showed Enterprise, if is it going to look? Nope, looks great. Looks like the classic, but just updated.
Yeah, that's it. Now there's something too, and I know we're here to talk about the first season, but then it gets me also thinking second season, because a lot of people were complaining also about the whole liberties they took with updating the set design, the costume design. Although I thought the costume design was fine. I thought it actually was a nice moving from Archer's time to Pike. I thought the costumes were fine. I had no problem with the costumes whatsoever. I do get the complaint about the ships themselves, and I'm really curious to see how they're going to show the interior of their Enterprise, if they're going to at all.
That's true. Yeah, see, that doesn't bother me as much. I mean, I know it bothers some people, and I get it. It just doesn't bother. I mean, you're looking at, you're not going to, there were instances like back in the night. Remember the DS9 episode Trials and Tribulations, and they went through, if I remember correctly, they went through, they made some of the set again. I get that. But if they're updating it, then, and I've been fine with it. I mean, the reality is, and we're in 2018. This isn't 1966 when they had limited whatever to, make the set design.
Right.
I expect it to be updated. But then you'd have people, you can't please everybody. So I like the decision they went with. We're just going to update it. We're just going to make it look, have the spirit of the original. But if we were designing this stuff today, what would it look like? And I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I am too. I thought it was, and I'll be honest with you, I actually liked Discovery's bridge design and the ready room and stuff more than the Shinzo.
Okay.
It's just a personal preference, Although I did like what did they call them? The transporters, the way they were on the sides.
Oh, yeah.
Which I thought was just so weird. And they said that's the old way we did it. And I'm like, when? And again, I know I'm being because they didn't do it on Enterprise.
Well, what's the gap between Enterprise and Discovery? 100 years or so?
Right, exactly. And that was one thing I did like. That actually gave me a little cheer, because I'm rewatching Enterprise, and you know what? I think part of the reason why Enterprise didn't work is that we were Star Trek'd out. Because in watching it now, it's actually pretty good. They and in some ways, the way people are like, oh, Lorca, he's he was a no nonsense. Look at his portrayal. I'm thinking Archer was a downright asshole at times, and could be just so mean, especially during this whole Xindi thing. He'll do whatever it takes to get the mission done. And I was glad to see that Discovery made some references to Enterprise, because I'm like, suck it. It's part of the continuity. If you even want to try and deny that Enterprise didn't exist, suck it.
Yeah, I think it would be silly anybody trying to make that argument.
Isn't there was that whole bit there too with the Empress, that part of her name is what's her name from the communications officer?
When and again, if we get into this about plot twists and the reveals, I kind of figured when we started watching the episode, I'm like, I know who the Emperor is going to be. That's I was right. But then my brain started making that connection. I'm like, I wonder if they're going to do the little tie-in back to Enterprises, mirror. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. I totally buy. I buy into this. This makes it better.
Yeah. No, it's, and like I said, it took me I had a rewatch. I watched it originally each week, and then during the Christmas break, I rewatched the entire first half, just one episode every night during Christmas break. And for some reason, and maybe that's part of what my problem was, that this is the kind of thing that maybe it shouldn't have been a weekly thing. They shouldn't have treated it like a TV show in that respect, that you got to, and then you got to have a break, or if you had to have a break, fine. All right, that was the break point. Look, where are we? We're lost and stuff. But maybe they should have just released all the episodes at once.
You mean in Enterprise, you mean?
For Discovery.
Oh, yeah, I was surprised they didn't go in that direction, just because that's the way, like Netflix does it, and, so much has changed in the way we consume media. I was same with you. I was kind of thinking they would put it all at one shot, but I wasn't upset because it got me to watch every week, just about,
Well, it got you to watch, but I just felt that, I came to appreciate it more when you can always do it anyway in the rewatching and stuff, but when I controlled the watching, and it wasn't like, okay, I gotta sit, I gotta wait another week for the next part. I was like, do I want to watch the next episode? I can watch it now, or I can watch it tomorrow night. For some reason, I appreciated it more. And in fact, actually, that's one thing I'm looking forward to, is sitting down and doing a rewatch of because I've only watched the second half once, each episode, on the weekly thing, because it's only been a week since it's ended.
Right.
And I've got the week off this week, so guess what I'm doing?
Using your time wisely.
Using my time wisely, exactly. Exactly. Now, that's something, too, though. The whole thing with and you mentioned the dynamic with Lorca and Michael. It's funny, because when it came to Michael, right from the beginning, you talk about things that, you saw coming. I saw coming that this was a redemption story for Michael when she tried to rebel against Georgia on the Shinzo. I saw it. I said, this is going to be it. In the end, as dark and as depressing as some of the stuff that's going on here right now, and oh my God, we're in war, and this is so sad, she's going to blossom somehow, and we're going to get, what Star Trek is all about when it's all over.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think it was probably one of my favorite parts of the season was at the end of the season, when basically reaffirming the Federation's values, hope, not giving in to the darker, more desperate parts of humanity. I think it's all kind of very reflective of the times we live in, which is what Trek's always done, right? You could look at the real world situation right now and go feel like those values are right now in a haze. And, Trek does what it does best, which is reaffirming and pulling back to what the core best parts of humanity. So that part I like a lot for the season.
Right.
That build-up.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, they actually brought that up. I keep coming back to it because it gave me a lot of things to think about, and it's a really good show. If you do you listen to it, or did you ever watch it live on Facebook? The Mission Log Show.
No, I have not.
Yeah, Tuesday nights. I think it's at around 7:00 Pacific time, 10:00 Eastern time. John Champion and Ken Ray get together, and they talk about each of the episodes. And like I said, they're going to go on, and they're going to be doing special episodes along the way, because there's things that they an hour. They're trying to do it in an hour, and they're trying to be good about keeping it to an hour instead of their regular podcast where they're reviewing each of the other Star Trek series, and they take as long as they want. So they keep themselves into it. But they gave me a lot to think about that I never really thought about in watching it myself. And like you said, yeah, the whole real world counterpart, in particular, one of their listeners who came in chimed in and said to go so far as to say the mirror universe is our current state of affairs here in the United States.
Oof.
I know.
Not far from the truth, unfortunately.
Not far from the truth, though. I mean, you really. But you're right. I mean, the whole Xindi thing was 9/11.
Exactly.
And the original series certainly did their share of parallels of the time, Vietnam War and what have you, civil rights.
Yeah, Cold War, civil rights. Yep.
So I mean, it everything there ticks off the boxes that says this is Star Trek. It's just done kind of like with a little spin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what one of the things I loved about Discovery is it feels like Trek was updated for today. I think you made an interesting point about Enterprise. People were kind of trekked out probably, and you had at that point what 13, 14, well over a decade straight of Trek in some form.
Yep.
And, by the end, the format was probably a little stale, probably needed something, they were still doing things the way they had done 15 years before. Yep. So Discovery, when I heard it was going to be a serial, that kind of like piqued my interest. And yeah, I totally lost my train of thought at the end, so never mind. We'll edit this part out. Not really, but okay.
That's all right. That's all right. Now, and that's the other thing too about. It's funny because the Mirror Universe allowed for us to have the return of certain characters, and I can't remember her name because I did like her, and I was kind of disappointed when they killed her. Was the security officer?
Yeah.
I was disappointed when they killed her. So it was nice to see her, even if briefly, and even if she was now evil. But it wasn't that far of a stretch because she could be a badass in our universe.
Yeah, it wasn't almost like she wasn't really that different. She was, again, if I recall correctly, she was loyal to Lorca in both instances, so it almost made her not too different, which worked. But I agree, I liked her too. But when she died, I was like, oh, they're killing off characters. Okay, like it's kind of realistic. You're not going to go through a whole 7 season. Like that was one thing that always usually bothered me was like nobody died, unless Okay, Tasha died, but you know what I'm saying? Like usually no one died in the show ever.
Tasha died because she wanted to leave. I'm sure if you asked the actress who played the security chief, if you asked the actor who played the doctor, it's like, would you like to stay on? Sure, nobody dies. But this is how real our story is going to. I mean, hell, sorry, spoilers. I told you this was Lorca's dead.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the thing with Lorca, that I found was. And talking about, see, where you were saying, you don't really go on Trek BBS a lot. You don't go online and read.
Right.
So I do occasionally indulge, right? I go look. I don't really participate much, but I'll read and, and always interested in the reactions. And, yeah, there were a lot of theories already about Lorca's, identity. And to the point where it was like, by the time it was revealed, it was like, that kind of, yeah. It was cool. It was a cool reveal the way they did on TV. But if you're involved or engaged in the online community in any fashion, you already had a really solid idea for months. Lorca is not our Lorca. Tyler's identity is, so and so.
Right.
So, it's almost like I should just not go online during, engage in any of the discussions or anything beforehand. For me, it felt like it diminished the impact a little bit,
right.
But it was still great storytelling.
That's when I knew I was hooked. When I kind of started making, my suggestions, my ideas, my theories of who was who. I actually, for the briefest time, thought Tyler was either Lazarus himself or another person like Lazarus who's able to jump between dimensions. Because the way he was just acting, I'm like, he's not handling our dimension very well.
Yeah, you're in that segment of fans that are like, they're going to tie all this stuff in from the original series, and here we go.
Yeah.
To me it was like, and see, this is how I think. I'm thinking, going, wow, we really haven't seen Vok in a while. They seem to be building that up, and then he's not even mentioned, no breath or hair or anything with him. Oh, it's probably. Oh, yeah, it's Ash Tyler.
Well, now let me ask you that, because honestly, I'm a little confused about that. Maybe you can fill in. Is it Ash with Vok imprinted on him, or was Vok physically altered to look like Ash and had his, and they're strong? I couldn't, because they talk about bones being, fingers being filed down and bones being broken and stuff, and I'm assuming that maybe it was like the Klingon being converted into a human. I mean, because we've seen that happen. We know it's happened before with the Trouble with Tribbles when we had the Klingon agents on the set.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I agree with you.
It's kind of pop.
I could use a top up myself. Yeah, the way I took it was they took Vok and transformed his body into a human. But the way that they would describe the memories part and the personality part, did leave it a little confusing because they make it sound like it then took his brain and put it into Ash, not his brain, but his Vok's brain. There we go. He's in 2 episodes.
Worst episode ever.
Yeah. They transplanted his mind into Ash Tyler's brain, but that doesn't jive up with the physical changes. So in the end, I just took it as they took Vok, they took his body and filed it down into, a human that looked like Ash Tyler, and they just put his memories Ash's memories into Vok's transformed body. But as we're having this discussion, we can go over to TrekBBS.com. Not that they're an ad. They're not sponsored or anything.
No, they're not.
And it'll probably be like a discussion that's like, those two guys were wrong, and this is why. And, we'll be like, okay.
Well, that's the danger when you're like just two guys on a Saturday morning or Sunday morning talking about Star Trek in an open communication like this, and it's like everybody looks and goes, yeah, he's wrong. He's wrong.
Yeah, he's wrong. Wrong. How can you not remember that guy's name? I'm like, dude, I can barely remember my own name most days.
And you say you're a fan.
Yeah, exactly. I'm living a lie, clearly.
Living a lie. I know. Let's talk. No. No. I mean, look. There's a lot there today, and the fact that we could actually be confused about that, I don't know. That says actually something good about the show because it's not just straightforward. It's not just handing you the standard. And again, like you said, yeah. When we got to Enterprise, we were doing over a decade of Trek, and frankly, there were episodes of Trek of Enterprise that you saw there that could have easily have plugged into Next Gen, Deep Space Nine. Yes. You can't plug in any of these episodes. Maybe DS9 you could, and even then you'd have to water it down.
Yeah,
you'd have to water it down because there is just no way any of the characters could be that angry, that one of my favorite things, and I know this is going to sound creepy again, I keep coming back to Mission Log Live because they did a survey on this. How do you like your Saru, as captain of Discovery or on a bed of rice?
Jeez.
But I actually thought, wow, that is a great twist to this. It's horrific, it's disgusting, but God, I thought, great twist there. It's like they're not only just the slaves, it's like we eat them.
Yeah, and it shows how horrifically, how horrific the Terrans are in that universe. Yeah. And I love, and one of my favorite parts of that mirror universe, like mini arc in that part of the season, was really the stress that Burnham and the crew are under to retain their ideals in this very, very pressure cooker of a situation.
Right.
And she's right there. She's got to pretend she's who she is. And she's eating already, and it was like a Soylent Green as people kind of moment, right?
Or a Saru Green as people.
All right, I'm logging off now. But her reaction where she's like trying not to vomit because that would just give something away. It was just like I couldn't imagine being in that situation. You can't imagine the stress the crew and in particular her what they were under. To survive, basically, and it just really helped highlight the differences between the two. It was just a great bit of acting, and yeah, it was. Some people might complain that it's too much, too visceral, and I thought it fit the show perfectly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and do you want to know something? I know this is going to sound weird because Star Trek has always prided itself over the years of having diverse aliens and diversity in people and stuff, but Saru was the first alien I truly felt was alien. Out of even Spock to a certain extent, because, Spock, God love, he's still half human. And he was always trying to understanding, like, Saru, this was never a story about Saru's journey to understand or maybe even become like us. Saru is Saru. That's it. And I loved it throughout the whole thing. The fact that he does have that instinct sometimes to flee. And he's fighting. That's what he's fighting because he knows he's got to fit in there. But even just the little touches. Like I'd notice him walking down a hallway or walking onto the bridge. And he always had that thing where he'd have his hands behind his back as he walked.
Yeah.
And there was just that air about it. And it just gave him something a little more. I mean, I don't know. I look at him and he reminds me of, and I wish they'd kind of done it, but it would have meant prosthetics or something with the CGI. he kind of reminds me of Arix from the animated series, and I was kind of hoping that's where they were going.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I really liked Saru's character arc throughout the show. Was kind of for me was unexpected because you don't think he's going to be, you know,
right,
anything like, you know, anything beyond, you know, what they'd already painted him as. And then, I mean, that speech he gives in the Mirror Universe once Lorca's revealed and when he encourages the crew, I think was like great moment. Showed how far the character had come, and I was actually a little surprised that at the end of the series or at the end of the season, you know, that he wasn't going to be the one that was going to be captain of the ship. Like I thought, okay, maybe he's developed that far, but I'm sure there's a reason for that.
Well, it's interesting now because then it comes to who is the captain. I mean, it's not going to be Saru, it's not going to be Michael. She just got her position back. I mean, her rank and stuff. That's all she's got there going for her. They're not going to give her a ship and all. And that's another thing I do like about the dynamics of the show. And it's something actually that I think many fans have said they'd be fine with for the longest time. Is that, you know, this isn't about selling action figures. And I'm sorry. I mean, you know, you got your Kirk and, you know, your Picard figures, you've got I've got in the closet there, I've got my Deep Space Nine, I've got the whole set of all the figures of Cisco and Quark and all of them, and like you say, none of them die. We get emotionally attached to these characters, and then they move on, whether they move on, you know, at the end of it, there's Georgia going off, and you know, or we lose Lorca, but it's like, but you know what? Guess what? That's life.
Yeah. And I think that's I commend the show for embracing that ideal. You know what I mean? I think it'll keep it fresh. I think it'll keep it engaging. And that's just how TV has changed over the last, you know, decade plus. I mean, you know, you look at shows like Lost and Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is a bit of a not really good example because that's an adaptation. But what I'm saying is, you know, not afraid to let go of characters, and even if they're popular, even if, you know what I mean?
Right.
Just sometimes you just got to go.
You got to go. It fits the story, not the bottom line of our marketing.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I gave up comic books years ago, because, like, I remember there was an X-Men comic where Rogue, who was one of my favorite characters in the X-Men, she died. And I was gutted. But I was fine. I was like, you know, that's life. 3 issues later, she's back.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, forget it. And it's because we need her for the movies, we need her for the comics, we need her for the posters, we need her for the toys, we need her, you know, it's like, no, stop. And I do like that. Now, but with that said, you know, it was something I was thinking about last night. Is, in particular, the first half of Discovery rewatchable, knowing some of the things we know, knowing that Lorca is his Mirror Universe counterpart? Is it rewatchable?
I think go back with that knowledge. You're gonna hunt and peck for clues. You know what I mean? You're gonna try to pick up other things that you missed. With, you know, it gives you a different perspective on what you're gonna look for. You know, like, how is it Lorca? Okay, so Lorca's from the Mirror Universe, and there they you know, eat Saru's people. Well, then how is it he chose him as his first officer? How does he interact with them? Is there any kind of subtlety there that's different that you may not have picked up the first time through? And I mean, a lot of that comes down to the writing and the actor. And I think Jason Isaacs is fantastic. You know, I would think it would be rewatchable because you're going to look for things that you didn't look through the first time.
Right. Now, in terms of episodes, I mean, just getting into a little bit more specifics here, because we're starting to run out of time. What stood out to you? Like when you say, wow, you walked away and said, either A, that was a great episode, or B, that was a Star Trek episode.
I liked the, and I don't know the title off the top of my head, and this is because I'm a sucker for these kind of stories. The one where they were caught in the time loop. It was a
What do you say? That to me was one of the best too. Go ahead.
It's just because you know, the show that got me into, like, really got me into Next Generation back in the day, the episode was Cause and Effect, which had a very similar, you know, premise. But I just thought there's a scene where the engineer's talking to Burnham, and he's like, he's the only one that knows outside of, drawing a blank. Wow. Outside of Mud, that they're stuck in a loop. And he says to her, tell me something that you haven't told anybody else. Like, tell me something that only you would know, that if I came to you and I said this to you, you'd know I'm not making this up or lying or being crazy. And I just thought, wow, that added like a level of emotional and, there's just a different level there. I love how they dug into the character there, and what we learned about Burnham. That shit. I won't spoil it, but I just thought it really added something to the episode on top of like the other little subplots that were going on. I just, timey-wimey, time twisting, time bending episodes. I love those to begin with, but this one really added something new to something that, and then seeing Lorca die like 50 million times was kind of at the time was like, whoa, that's kind of crazy. Oh, that was a great episode. I thought it was great, executed fantastically.
I agree with you. I mean, it's funny. I brought this up last week when we were talking about time loops, and I brought up this episode. It was the one episode I was not looking forward to because, again, there's those out. It's like Trek does time stuff,
Yep.
Trek's, and it's got Harry Mudd. It's got like the things that I'm like, really, we got to go back to those wells in order to tell our new, exciting, different story. But I felt they did it differently because honestly, Trek doesn't always handle time travel well. I don't think.
Nah, you're right.
I don't think they handle it. Cause and Effect is definitely one of the exceptions. But this was outstanding. And for another reason, too, I like the fact that, like, with Cause and Effect was a great story. But there was a certain, and I know some fans might scream at it, a certain laziness to it in terms of the direction and the, like, when we saw the loop, a lot of times they'd repeat the same scenes.
Yes.
And they'd repeat it with the same, almost it seemed like stock footage as part of the loop. This, no. It's like when we have like Michael and Ash talking, and this is before they start getting more and more like, let's dance and do this. So it's just a quick talk before they get the announcement to come to the bridge and stuff. It's different angles every time.
Yes.
Different. So they varied it up. So you didn't sit there and feel like you were watching the same thing over and over again and you're wishing to God, someone please figure it out because this is getting redundant. It got,
yes.
And it was interesting in that way. And then they'd add the little bits, like you said, the engineer coming along, and it's suddenly like, I know what's going on. I get this. And I appreciated all that. My only problem with the whole thing, and it was the one thing that made it seem like it came out of the animated series, was that Harry was doing this all with a time crystal.
Oh, okay.
I do you remember the animated series episode with Harry Mudd where he had the love crystals?
No, I did not see that one.
He's got this thing with crystals, or the fact that even in I, Mudd, he's feeding the girls potions or whatever to make them look attractive to them. It's like this whole little thing, and I know it's a quirk with Harry, but I was kind of hoping not to see something like that. And sure enough, he goes, "I've got a time crystal." It's like, oh, here's the magic. It's not even about the science of it. Here's the magic that's making it all happen. It's a crystal. It's and I know you could probably science, technobabble it all you want and make it sound as legit, and they didn't. That's the other thing. I got to give them credit. They didn't technobabble it. They just said it's a time crystal.
Yeah, they're like, we're just gonna own it. Like, hey, how are you doing? Time crystal. Just move along, buddy. Like, cool. We'll move on. And it was, but just a real quick kind of telling what you said. Each loop added, instead of being a repetition, like you're saying, with a redundant, added a level, continuing layer onto the relationship, continuing to kind of peel away at the character, the relationship between Ash and Michael. And I thought that was really well done. Like you said, it wasn't redundant. It's a redundant time loop, as weird as that sounds to say.
Now, there's something. Do you think Ash will be back?
I'm going to say no. I don't think he'll be back next season. I mean, who knows? I could be completely off. But I think if we're looking at the show, and the show so far doesn't seem to have any issues with a sense of permanence, like somebody dies, that's it. We're moving on from this situation. I think like his story's been told, and I think the purpose he had on the show and the character arc he had with Michael, and kind of like that very, unique for Trek. Broken Heart. I don't know. I don't know what they gained by bringing him back. Do you know what I mean? And I don't really see that there's anything more to do with that character. Right. I don't think so. What do you think?
I could see, like, possibly if they brought him back in the second half of the second season, where maybe they're picking up the Klingon storyline. Mm-hmm. Because he went off with, what's her name? Klingon lady.
That's...
Klingon lady.
We're really on point with the character names today, aren't we? And I include myself in that.
Well, that's one thing I will say. I didn't like the fact that she had to intimidate or threaten the Klingons to sort of get it together. I mean, I'm glad that we didn't have to go with the way of destroy, because obviously you couldn't destroy it. It exists in that universe. We see that as we continue on with Trek and Next Generation and all. But the whole thing of, like, here I am, I've got the button, I'll push the button if you all don't behave.
Yeah, I didn't like the resolution of the war either. I didn't like the way it came down to, hey, I'm going to drop this bomb down here. Or no, I did, but I have to, I'm going to give you control of it. And you decide what to do. We're out, and then they leave. A fantastic season, like the best first season of Trek.
Yes.
And I felt like it almost was inverted, because usually you start kind of and then you get better. And I felt like it was great, but the last episode didn't work. Parts of it didn't work for me. The pacing and stuff, and the resolution of the war plot, it just didn't really work for me. Now, it was okay, but it just didn't feel like it felt contrived a bit.
You know what? It also felt rushed.
Yes.
It felt very rushed.
Yeah.
You know? And this is the thing that gets me. You're on a streaming platform. You don't have to bring it in at 43, 45, 48. Even if you're like, well, we're streaming, we'll go 48. You don't have to bring it in at 48. You can bring it in at an hour and a half. That could have been a double episode season finale.
And that was... Good point. That was something I was thinking when I watched it. By the time I got to the end, and I'm like thinking about how it played out, I'm like, yeah. Like usually you think by the time you get to the end of the season, you're like, man, we're good. You don't. And I was sitting there like, this probably needed another episode or two to flesh this whole conclusion, because they're in the mirror universe. They get back, and then it feels like, well, we got to wrap up the war, guys, and we only got like 1 or 2 episodes left. And yeah, they could have done with another episode or two, or done a movie. Sized finale. And you're right. I mean, they own the platform. They're not, it's not going to be syndicated on TV that I'm aware of. So, yeah, I agree with that. It felt like they needed more time. And I don't know if they just ran out of budget or whatever, but...
Right. Well, it's even just the whole thing. And then that's where, like, the ending with the Enterprise then, because everything was so rushed, and then it's like, oh, and we need a hook to bring you back for the second season. No, you don't. No, you don't. Your subscribers are going to stay on because they're it's not the same as network television. There's not, the choices they made, in the end, they treated this and ran it like it was on network television, but on a streaming platform. And to me, for $5.99 a month, that bothered me. I guess then I would say, yeah. It's like, you know what? If we're going to pay $5.99, break all the rules. You broke the rules of how you tell the story. Yes. The characters, everybody, because some people would have been probably put off if this had been on regular television throughout its entire run. You broke those rules. You broke those rules of what it means to be Star Trek. Great. But you didn't break the rules of what it means to be a streaming show, or at least follow the rules of a streaming show. Because, again, there are plenty of... It's funny, because, like, and I know you're going to laugh, it's like, look at what he's bringing in as a comparison. I recently watched... I've been watching Fuller House.
Okay.
And I'm watching the second half of the current season, and they're in Japan and all this, and I'm like thinking, you brought your entire cast to Japan, and you still kept it within the 30-minute confines that you've got all your other episodes. I'm like, you've got them in Japan. Do an hour-long episode. Do more bits with them. Do more things, and this way also then the story would have... Because the story seemed very rushed as they were resolving the whole love between DJ and her former boyfriend, and it's just... Same thing. It's like, you're on streaming. Do it. Take the time you need. Hell, the BBC will give us, extra length episodes of Doctor Who. They don't worry about time. They go, how much time do you need to tell the story? This. Then tell your story. As long as the budget's there, And that's
Correct.
the only thing I could imagine. It's like, because I remember when the whole thing came out, I think the 15th episode was a tack on, because I think it was only supposed to be 14, if I remember right.
Yeah, I thought 13 or so episodes. But I mean, who knows? I mean, that's just what you hear and see. That's what's rumored.
Right. Yeah.
But if you went through the trouble to add another, who knows? Somehow, it could have benefited from more time, regardless of how they broke it out.
Right. But I will give you that. Best first season. Hit the ground pretty much. The first 2 episodes a little rocky, and yet still better than some of the premieres of other Trek series.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty bold choice to do a 2-part premiere that is essentially a prologue to the entire series.
Right.
I thought that was, and like you, I was like, by the end of the second episode, I'm like, well, somewhere we're going to see Discovery sometime. Mm-hmm. But to me, the problem I had with the premiere episode, or the 2-parter, was it just felt like a lot of Starfleet officers making bad decisions for plot reasons. Right. But I mean, you take that aside, and it didn't kill the episode for me. I thought it was a fantastic premiere, but that just bugged me during the episode. With some of the decisions they were making, was kind of like, yeah, I don't. Why are you doing this? I wouldn't have thought anybody, normal person, would have made that decision. Right. But I mean, the show. I mean, it wasn't like it was a failure, and I like the time they took the time to build up establish the backstory of the characters. Saru and then the rest of the crew that basically wound up being transplanted onto Discovery later on, and it gives a lot of great context.
No, I agree. We've got just a few minutes left. Final thoughts, or what are you hoping to see in the second season when it comes out in 2019?
That's a good question. Because when Discovery was announced, the rumor was it was going to be an anthology series, right? So, that every season was going to be different. Now, my understanding is they've gone away from that, and we're going to see Burnham and company for season 2. I feel like the story in season 1 was perfect, like in the sense of, the way it was started, wrapped up, I don't know what I want to see season 2, obviously. I don't know where they're going to go with it. I probably want to see a little bit back to the Strange New Worlds. Kind of see an extended exploration mission, maybe. Like let's do something like we've seen Planet of the Week episodes, right, throughout the life of Trek. But what if you did one where you got to a system and there's some kind of crisis or something there, and it actually has enough meat to last a whole season? I mean, that could be an interesting take on it. And that off the top of my head, that's probably where I'd like to see or be interested in seeing it going. How about you?
I think I'm in the same boat, but I'm also curious to see how much of this whole thing now with Enterprise coming into the scene, how much of a part in the first half of this second season they're going to play. If they're going to play a huge part, or what the deal is.
I really hope it doesn't. I mean, and I say that because I'm like, it's Discovery, right? So like you were saying earlier about having the show stand on its own, I think having any kind of extensive involvement with Enterprise will just kind of dilute it a bit.
Right.
So I hope it outside of, if they even pick up directly after in the second season premiere, I hope it's not an extensive, and it's not because I don't like the Enterprise or am interested in seeing Pike. I just want Discovery to stand on its own. I want it to be its own thing.
Right.
Occasional guest appearances, sure, but nothing extensive. Not like half a season arc where they team up with the Enterprise for blah blah blah. I'm not interested in seeing that.
Okay. All right.
Real question for you.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I have another quick. What we haven't talked about was Discovery. What do you think of the ship design?
It took a little getting used to with the transport thing. I'll admit that was also a little cartoonish, the whole let's flip around and disappear like that.
Oh, yeah.
But the ship design itself I was fine with. I thought it was actually different. I mean, I won't say I'm in love with it. I did say, though, I did like it better than the Shinzo.
And I was the opposite. I was finished the first 2 episodes, or rather finished the third episode, and I was like, I really wish they'd used the Shinzo as the Discovery design, swap them. You know, Discovery has the same problem I had with the Enterprise D back in the day when it came out. It just looks really weird to me at certain angles. Right. Certain angles, I'm like, oh, that shit looks nice. Like, it looks really cool. And other times, I'm like, that's got fat body, like that square, like that triangular, really big body. The nacelles are like 50 miles long, and it just looks weird. Right. But other times, I'm like, sexy. Like, yeah, it's like I can't. Yeah. So it's grew on me quite a bit over the course of the season, but it just really depends on the angle. I just figured we hadn't talked about the design. Might as well just check that box off before we sign off.
Before we go. Well, in the end, it doesn't matter. Enterprise will always be my girl. I mean, I still have to fight back the tears every time I watch Star Trek 3.
Okay.
Knowing that's it. That's really the... No matter what, and as much as I say Enterprise is alive again, and Enterprise was gone, and that's my ship. Because to me, the Enterprise... I was kind of like Kirk in the original series when he'd call her she, and he, never going to give you up. I was like, I'm along for the ride. That is a living, breathing character in the series, the Enterprise.
I agree.
Yeah.
I got nothing else to say. I don't know why I even started. I was like,
Well, Julio Angel Ortiz, thank you so much for being here. Now, if folks want to continue any of this conversation with you, how can they get a hold of you?
I may maintain I have a site, jaowriter.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at jaowriter.
All right.
And thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on, and I hope to have you again real soon. Folks, that's going to do it for this episode. Next time, we're back with an in-review episode. Keith, Dan Persons, myself, and hopefully some other people will be here, and we're going to be looking at some of the current pop culture fare.
Cop culture? You're digging into some real social commentary there, huh?
That's another show for another day, yeah. So until next time, folks, thank you once again, Julio. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.